Hello and welcome to the Success with Savita podcast, where we share hot tips on how to do life and business without losing your mind. I'm your host, Savita Nanjappa, entrepreneur, high-achieving 9-to-5er turned transformational success coach, helping you create a wildly successful business. Come hang out with me and other fabulous humans like you every week for stories and chats packed with a healthy dose of tips, resources, how-tos, and real talk. Side effects may include a happier and more confident you with each passing day. Hi, welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Bijoy Goutaum. So on that note, I want to ask you, okay, I started it now. What makes my podcast successful? Besides these three obvious reasons, obviously, if you know your why, you're serving your audience, you know who your audience is, and you're doing something unique so people are coming. Are there anything else that I need to do to continue to make my podcast a success? And, I'm going to club 2 questions here. How do I get into the top 100?
So, Sabita, I'll answer, this question a little differently than you expected. I've always encouraged people to, at the very, very beginning of their podcasting journey, to decide or define what that podcasting success look for them. What does success mean for them, right? So not everyone start podcast for the same reason. Like maybe for some people, the reason that they wanted to start a podcast is because they wanted to connect with all these amazing people by interviewing them on the podcast and build that relationship with them, right? So that's the first one. Now, for some people, it could be like they wanted to just build their personal brand. Then, their focus is going to be on getting more and more people to listen to the podcast, right? So, or maybe for some people, it's just that they want to pay back and they don't care how many people are listening, but all they are interested in is just, sharing what they know and feel good about it, right? So I would say define your podcast success in the very beginning. Do you want more numbers? Do you want to interview certain people? Do you want to maybe just improve your communication skill? That could be for me, if you look at it, like, one of the successes for me of me doing this podcast is now, from being someone who would just read those 10 questions in front of the guest to now, all I need to do is just write some bullet notes and I'm good to go and I can interview people. And, I have become much better conversationalist, right? So that's what success looked like for me today. But now also, for some of you, impact is another thing that a lot of people look at, right? So like if you want to impact lives of people, right? If you want to sort of like, one of the biggest successes for my podcast is when people actually get back to me saying that, hey, you know what, I listened to your podcast and this really, really helped me get out of this phase of my life. So that's, success for me. So I would say you got to define what success looks like for you and then not get overwhelmed by other people's successes. So that you are not worried that Savita has so many episodes or so many, downloads for her podcast, because you have defined your podcasting goal on day one. And as long as you are getting closer to that goal, you are doing good. So now the second part about like, how do I get on the top 100, of the podcast? We don't exactly know how these, algorithms of Apple Podcast and Spotify work. But some of the things that we have seen, that really could play part in the part, and they usually create this top 100 list almost on a daily basis. They sort of refresh that list, right? And the few things that sort of, contribute to that, as I mentioned, though we are not very clear on that because none of these platforms mention how they create these lists. But some of the things that really, sort of contribute is one is how many people listen to your podcast in the past 24 hours. That's one metric. Second metric that they look at is the number of people who follow or subscribe to the podcast on those platforms, right? How many subscribers or followers do you have on that? So these are the 2 key metrics that they look at. So now, if that's the case, then, we want to then look at getting more and more people to listen to our podcast on that platform and more people to subscribe to them. And one of the things that, podcasters can do is instead of sending audiences to 10 different podcasts, while it's important for you to be on all different places because you never know where your listener might be listening to your podcast on. But whenever you are sending audiences, send them to one platform, like pick a platform, 1 or 2. Maybe if you want to, send people on Apple, then maybe send them to Apple Podcast because it's a native app. They don't have to download anything. And on Android, maybe pick an app of your choice, maybe a Google Podcast or maybe a Spotify, whatever, the app of your choice, and send all your audiences just to that platform, nowhere else. So that will like direct all your audience. When you direct all your audience to just one platform, sending the volume to one platform, instead of saying that go and listen to my podcast in 10 different places, listen to it in this platform or that platform, even though you are available on other platforms, then you are, sending all your traffic to one place that will sort of help you, climb up the charts.
Wow, that's a fantastic tip. I'm going to try it myself. This is me just getting to pick your brain, and this is a masterclass in progress. So, as we move on, I want to come back to one question that most people have, right? At the end of the day, it's like you're putting so much time and effort. What's the revenue? What's the end game? Is there monetization? So, how can a podcaster today monetize? I'm saying beyond the obvious. One is, of course, we know that there's the ads. But what's your advice? What are some ways that you've seen there are possibilities to monetize today?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of a macro perspective and I'll get into the micro as well, right? So the macro perspective here is for podcasters to understand whether you want to make money from your podcast or you want to make money because of your podcast. And what we mean by making money from your podcast is, like you said, right? I need to be able to make money from the ads on my podcast, which means I'm directly going to make money from my podcast, right? That could be ad revenue, or that could be sponsorship, or maybe listeners' donation, right? So that could be, making money from your podcast, which is because you post an episode and then you have a sponsor on it, or you have affiliate embedded on it, or you have a set of listeners who donate you on a monthly basis, whatever. So that's like making money from your podcast. And now the other perspective is making money because of your podcast. Now, what that means is you are not making revenue from any of those methods that I just said, right? Which is not by sponsorship, advertisement, listeners' donation, and so on and so forth, but you are making money because you have a podcast. I'll give you an example, right? So you are into coaching, right? Let's say you interviewed someone on your podcast. And because you interviewed someone on your podcast and you realize that that person has got somebody in their network who needs a coach, who needs coaching, then they are going to like, hey, you know what? I had a chat with Savita. She was really amazing, during my interview. I think you should speak with Savita, and she can really, help you with the coaching. Or maybe you run a company and your company offers some product and service. And because you invited someone on a podcast and, they got to know more about the work that you do. And because of which now these people are like, hey, you know what? I think if I need the service, then I need to go to these guys because, when I had a chat, I really made that connection. And the hypothesis here is this, right? Now that Savita, I'm on this podcast, I'm sharing my life. When I do that, I already feel close to you. I already trust you, right? So when we share our life with someone, when we share the stories of our life with someone, we naturally feel close with that person. And think about it. And that's exactly what you are doing with your guests on the podcast. When you're inviting them on your podcast and asking them to share their life story and journey of the struggles and so on and so forth, you are encouraging them to be vulnerable. And because they are vulnerable, you are also, they feel naturally close to you and they start trusting you. And when they trust you, you are on top of their mind when they need the product or service that you need to offer to them. That's one. Now, the second one is, because you have a podcast, you never know what the kind of opportunities that come your way. Maybe a CEO of a company listen to your podcast, and then they might come to you and offer something else. Now, you didn't make money directly from a podcast, but because you had that podcast, somebody discovered you, and then, you got some sort of opportunity, which would have never been possible, for you. And that is something that, I see happen every single time with so many people. I see that because I had a podcast, somebody invited, me as a speaker. Somebody would say, because I had a podcast, somebody gave me this voiceover work. Because I had a podcast, somebody agreed to partner with me in this project. Somebody, decided to invest in the business. These are the stories that I see over and over again, just because you have a podcast. So I think, it's, if somebody is just waiting to make money from the podcast, then trust me, and at the stage where we are in India right now, you are going to be honestly disappointed. So it's better that you start thinking of how can I make money because I have a podcast? How can I leverage the network that I've formed from the podcast? So, you can do things like start offering your own product and services. If you do a fitness podcast, then launch a 30 days fitness challenge and invite your listeners to join you on a 30-day fitness challenge where every single morning you take them, you lead the workout session, and then, push your listeners to sort of get fitter, and then, charge them 10K or 20K, whatever that you want to charge. And even if you get 5 people join you on a 30-day fitness challenge and you charge 10K, then you ended up making 50,000 from 5 people. You don't need thousands and thousands of people to listen to your podcast. Even if you just have 100 people listen to your podcast and 5 people out of those 100 people decided to join you on a 30-day fitness challenge, you ended up making 50,000 grand.
I mean, great tips. I have one to add over here because I was doing the podcast. I mean, there have been so many times when I wondered, what have I gotten to? Because it seems easy on the outside. And then when you start and you've got a schedule, you've got to record. So I had an opportunity, and currently I host Accenture's Vahini, their diversity podcast, which is within their company. And I'm the host for season 2, where I do get paid. So there are these unexpected, I didn't go looking for it, but somebody liked my interviewing. Yes, because I had a podcast. So it's very unexpected.
Not necessarily you are making any money directly on your podcast, right? But because you had a podcast, they realized that, hey, you know what, she's good with moderating or hosting a podcast, and let's get her to do the show. And now, because when you do a podcast, you know how to do a podcast, and you know how to edit the podcast, how to produce a show. Now, a lot of companies are looking at building in-house podcasting team, which also means that there are going to be a lot of job openings for the podcast producers, script writers, people who can host podcasts, people who can, edit shows, and so on and so forth. So, those are like a lot of ways that you can sort of, look at.
Music to my ears to hear all of this, because also, I happen to be in business as a business coach. So from there, I want to segue into your interviews, because you've had some amazing, brilliant guests on your podcast. So what to you is a story, if one that comes to mind, that stands out from your interviews? Is there something that you'd like to share with our audience?
There are so many, and I think it would be unfair, to my guests to say that, this is the story that, that stands out. But, early on, one sort of story that really, really, stuck with me. And obviously, as I said, there are so many, but, just to pick one, I would go maybe from the earlier ones, right? So, there's this person called Dr. Sukhi Mukher. He is, based out of Canada, and he is into biohacking and so on and so forth. So I reached out to him. I wrote an email saying that, hey, Dr. Mukher, I would like to have you as a guest on my podcast. This is why I am doing this podcast, and I intend to inspire so many people with this podcast. And he wrote back to me saying that, hey, you know what? Just because you had the courage to reach out to me, I would say yes. And that really, really stuck with me, because he said that just because you took that action, that, to invite me, I'm going to be guest on your podcast. I don't care how many people listen. And that really stuck with me. And when I had him on the show, he had this amazing journey. At that time, when I was doing my podcast, I was 24, 25. And till the time, till that age in his life, he was completely in drugs. He was completely living this life, completely messed up life. And then now in his late 30s, or I think early 40s, he has completely transformed the life. And he was leading speaker, and he was inspiring people. He is an author. He has built his family, and that sort of really, really stuck with me, because how people can take charge of their life and completely transform their life from being a drug addict to now being somebody who is helping people to respect their body and heal, and teaching them the principles. That was a really, really beautiful story. But then there are so many other stories that really that I get to hear on the show, so that really is something that stuck with me for so long.
Yeah. I'm sure there must be so many, and I listened to it on your, for anyone listening, you must listen to all the episodes, the guest interviews. Some of them are a masterclass. With that, Bijay, I have another question for you. I know you touched upon this at the start when you said, I used to have these 10 questions, and then, I would just ask that. How has your own interviewing skills transformed from when you started to now? Of course, we know that success is repetition. The more you do it, you get better. But are there some key learnings from your own podcasting journey that you'd like to share?
Yeah, as I said, right, I think, when I say that, hey, you know what, now I have improved so much. I'm not saying that I'm a master, conversationalist, or I'm a master communicator person, who has this master communication skill. I'm on my own journey, and I know, but there is one thing that I know, that, where I was, in 2017 to where I am, there's a massive difference. And this is something that my listeners have actually come back and said that, Bijay, I've been listening to you for a couple of years now, and we have seen how you have improved and grown as a host, and which just shows on your podcast, right? So I'd say I've become way more confident, because when I used to interview people, I used to think that, hey, you know what, this is a really, really big person, and I would get way too nervous, because I would feel that, this is the person that is really big. And then I realized that, in doing a lot of that, I realized that, hey, you know what, it's just another person on the other side as well. And also, a lot of these people made me feel like I was the most important person at that point of time. And that sort of kept on adding to my own confidence in going out and literally talking and interviewing anyone, and just being, my best self there. So, a few things that, that has really helped me in interviewing people is I start by talking about something that they deeply care about. I try and find what is that one thing that this person deeply cares about. And that is the first thing that I, ask in my interview, and not necessarily I put that out in the final episode. And why do I do that? Because when I ask something that they care about, it changes the energy in them. It lightens up their eyes. All of a sudden, I have taken them to a completely different energy level. And now that they are on different energy level, then I ask whatever I wanted to ask, because now I have gotten them, excited about this thing. Then I can ask whatever I want, because I got them to the zone where they are open and willing in sharing whatever you ask. So I think, that is one hack that has really, sort of helped me in getting people to open on the conversation, and listening intently, and sort of asking follow-up questions, and sometimes just asking, sometimes just quietly listening and saying that, but why? And then, you get a lot of, stories out of the person. And one of the really, really cool hack that I figured out is, in the conversation, Sabita, if I said that, that was my story, and I go quiet, we hate these awkward pauses in the conversations, are intense. And then, because you are a coach yourself, then, I'm sure you do this, right? So where, this, right? So when there is an awkward pause, the itch is to feel that awkwardness, because we want, like, hey, you know what, nobody's saying something, I need to say something. And when somebody is sharing the story, if you just stay quiet for that extra 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, if it requires, you will get some of the best stories that possibly that person would have never shared before. And I do that all the time. When somebody's sharing the story, I'll just go quiet, because we want to make sure, is it safe for me to share this story here? We are constantly thinking that, I think this much is enough for this, context. And I'm not sure if I want to give the whole story here. But if you are quietly saying that I'm not going to say a word, that means, oh, damn, Savita wants more of this, then I need to add more. So, those would be few, hacks there.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So much to take away. This conversation's on fire. I just have a couple of, as we come to the end, just a couple more questions. I love asking this question because I love to know about everybody else's life. I should have worked for Facebook, but a day in your life, what does that look like?
Oh, now my life at this point of time is crazy, not what it used to be a month back, because my friends decided to gift me a small pup. So my day starts by this pup jumping by my bedside and waking me up, and now all of a sudden, I feel like a father responsibility is coming to my life. So so on a typical, obviously apart from me, paying attention to this overly attention seeking animal in the house, but my life revolves around building wine studio, and working with the brands, and constantly talking to people, creatives, folks whom we can create podcast with, talking to brands, and seeing how we can sort of help them meet their objective with the podcast. And my role at Wine Studio is I lead the creative and production side. So my job is to constantly come up with interesting ideas for the podcast, and constantly sort of work with the production team to make sure that we are on time with the shows that we're working on. And also, I teach people on how to create a podcast. So that's something that I do over the weekend, because I realize that I am teacher at heart, and if I don't get to teach or share what I'm learning, then I'm never going to be satisfied. So I continue to do that. I teach people and share what I'm learning on a day-to-day basis. So that's pretty much what my life is. Nothing exciting. It's like,
no, all of this is exciting. Trust me. I was going to ask you, as I let you go, like, what's your advice? But I feel like you've given so much value already in this conversation. So I have a very different question for you. And this is something that, all podcasters kind of go through, especially those who are reaching out to guests and trying to interview. How do you handle rejections when you send out interview requests? How do you handle it? When does it keep you down?
First few rejections, it hurts. Like, it hurts so bad that you take it personally. You feel that, how come you can say no to me? I'm going to show you who I am. You don't know who I am. You don't know my value yet. And that's why you are saying no. I'm going to show you. I'm going to become so big one day that you are going to come to me and say that, I'm going to become, can I please be a guest on your show? That's what I would think when I was, starting out. But then, I realized, later on, I realized, like, the reason that, and also it's because when I started saying no to other people, then I started to sort of understand that I'm not saying no to that person. I'm saying no to that particular opportunity or that particular idea that you went with, which is, in this case, the idea is like, I want to interview on you on my podcast. But maybe that person's priority in life right now is not to get interviewed on podcast, or not to share knowledge anywhere else, for whatever reason, right? Maybe they have things going in their life. Maybe they are too occupied, or whatever their reasons are. It's just that, they are prioritizing something else, and which is more important for them at that point of life in their life than becoming guests on our podcast, right? And when I sort of had that, then I sort of started making peace with the fact that, I don't have to hold any grudges. And I have seen that people who have said no as to become guest on my podcast, we have, went on to do something else, because the other idea seemed very exciting for them than becoming the guest on that podcast, right? So I would say that, you don't have to take it personally, but, it's easier said than done. You will get there when you have like rejections after rejections and people ghosting you. You will realize that, hey, you know what? I think it's okay. There's something important in their life than becoming guest on my podcast right now, and it's completely fine.
You say that so well. And as we come to the end of this interview, how can people learn from you? How can people get in touch with you? We're going to be dropping all the links, of course. But what's the best way to learn from you?
You can visit my website, bijayspeaks.com, or you can go on my Instagram, Bijay Speaks. So, when you go to my Instagram, Bijay Speaks, that's where, I'm most active. And you will find all the links on the, a bio of my Instagram, or you can go to bijayspeaks.com and you will see everything that I do. And, I'd be happy to help and serve in any possible way.
Sure. So one is to learn from you, and for brands who are listening to this, as if you would like to start your own podcast, they could tie up with you, they could connect with you to have you produce for them, edit for them as well. Yeah. Amazing, Bijay. Thank you so much. It's been a joy speaking to you, and for being so generous with your time. I know you've given me a lot of value. You've spent such a long time with me. My audience, we all appreciate you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Savita. Thank you so much. You are a great host, and continue doing what you are doing. And I know the amount of time, efforts, and energy it takes in producing episodes after episodes. And now you are almost at 70 episodes. That's quite a lot of work. Take some time to pat on your own back and just keep going and keep inspiring people with the journey of other folks. You are doing great. Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to be cheering for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode and you want more, you can go to the show notes on my website, which is successwithsavita.com/podcast.
If you like what you've heard so far, I would be grateful to you if you could leave me a 5-star review, subscribe to this podcast, and share with a friend who may find this useful. You can also follow me on my Instagram at Success with Savita and DM me any questions you may have, and I will be happy to answer them for you. Until the next episode, believe in yourself and all the best to your success.